Call to order. Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers meeting, August 24th, 2023.
You want to try that one more time?
No, I already called them to order.
Oh,
They
okay.
see they came to order, so we're good. Okay. We have Manager Maxwell attending virtually this evening, so we'll be doing our business with roll call procedure. So let me proceed to call the attendance. Manager Hejmati,
Here.
Manager Maxwell,
Here.
Manager Olson,
Here.
Manager Miller,
Here.
Manager Sando,
Here.
Manager Loftus.
Here.
Manager White is here. We surely have a quorum. I see no members of the public here, so we'll move to item 3, which is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Manager Miller moves. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll take Manager Hejmati's second. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I have to do a roll call. Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
Manager Olson,
Aye.
Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. The agenda is approved. On the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, approval of the check registers for general checking account, surety checking account, and wire transfers, and 3 resolutions. 2344 is to approve the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund grant agreement and conflict of interest policy. 45 is approving the funding agreement with Medina for the Morningside Ravine project. And 46 is authorization to contract with Metro Sales for document scanning services. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Manager Olson moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Manager Sando seconds. Voting on the consent agenda, Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Loftus,
Aye.
Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
Manager Olson,
Aye.
and Manager White also votes aye. I have no meetings to report on, so I'll look to Manager Miller for a policy and planning committee report, and then Manager Hejmati for a quick report on the 2D modeling. Manager Miller.
We had a very good presentation and discussion on the proposed rule changes, and they're getting prepared for presentation and public hearings. And it's really a milestone to have the rules so up to date and responsive to everybody's concerns, that move away from the regulatory image to more of a partnership with all the various applicants.
Thank you. Manager Hejmati.
The first part of the 2D model is just moving forward, and Kaylee and her staff, sent out RFPs to apply the, to get the data together for the 29 communities. And there were 2 applicants who sent in proposals. And what happened was last week was reviewing their proposals and also having interviews with them. And it seems like they are both of them seem to know what they're doing, and there's some questions about them that we need to work out, and we need to talk to them. Possibly we need to talk to them further. Kaylee and her staff have been doing a great job with it, and when when they have come to the point where they make a recommendation, we will come back. And when is that going to be, Kaylee? September 14th. September, okay.
Thank you. The upcoming committee and board meetings are noticed. We have a 3-week gap between meetings, as happens periodically. CAC meets on the 20th of September with Manager Sando as the liaison. We will now move, I open the public hearing for the budget and levy. Mr. Whisker.
Very good.
Thank you, President White and Board of Managers. As President White noted, tonight we're holding a public hearing for the district's draft 2024 budget. And tonight's hearing builds on a foundation of work conducted by the board beginning in May of this year. I've got some IT things I need to handle here. And since the initial forecast, the board's worked from projections through the detail of the capital improvement plan, our program budgets, capital finance, operations, and personnel. We've reviewed the balance and strategic alignment of the budget and undertaken a series of refinements based on feedback from both the board managers and, of course, the Citizens Advisory Committee that Treasurer Loftus was kind enough to attend with me. And as we always do, following public comment this evening, we'll work to integrate and respond to any feedback leading up to the September 14th budget adoption, which is just a day before statute requires, September 15th. And from there, we'll be making any additional refinements that need to be made as we track towards a final public comment period later this year as part of our truth and taxation hearings before finalizing the budget with the counties in December. And before we step straight into the numbers, given the policy significance of the budget, I always like to take a moment to zoom out and remind ourselves and the public what our annual budget stands to support at a big picture level. So I've put together a concise 58-slide deck for us to step through tonight. And I'm going to start with our vision and where we've been in recent years, the work of which naturally extends into next year. A lot of our work spans multiple years. We don't start and end on a neat January 1 to December 31st fiscal year. In terms of our vision, we believe that natural systems underpin local identity, they create a sense of place, and that essentially watershed work is a critical component in building thriving communities. And because land use is a significant driver in the amount of water in the watershed and the quality of the water, and the fact that we don't own or control all the decisions that are being made about the land, whether we're working on our strategy of capital projects or policy, we're always thinking about how watershed investments can be catalysts for our partners' goals in the built environment. And we do that by always taking a data-driven understanding of the watershed first, and then layering in goals related to transportation and infrastructure, economic development, and parks and open space, so that we can create amazing places in the watershed that are good for water and good for the environment, good for communities, and good for people. Now, in recent years, as part of our Lake Minnetonka strategy to address the largest polluting tributaries to the lake, this vision and strategy has been hard at work focused in the upper watershed of 6 Mile Creek, all 27 square miles of which is tributary to impaired Halstead Bay on Lake Minnetonka. With the support of partners like Carver County, Victoria, Three Rivers Park District, and others, we've worked with the University of Minnesota and $600,000 in Lessard Sam's funding to implement one of the state's largest efforts to manage common carp, ultimately removing over 22,000 pounds of fish that are damaging to the shallow lake environments that are part of that 14-lake system. With $500,000 in Clean Water Legacy funds, we've also directly dosed Wasserman Lake and nearby ponds with alum to address internal sources of phosphorus. In building on our track record of public and private partnerships to restore wetlands and valuable green space and corridors, we've partnered with the City of Victoria to protect and restore over 30 acres of upland and wetland to create the Wasserman Lake Preserve, the city's first ecologically based park, which provides lake access, nature-based recreational opportunities, and sits at the highest point overlooking Wasserman Lake and serves as a real asset, amenity, and flagship project for us in this part of the community. And all of that work has gotten us to a point in 2023 where Wasserman Lake is almost meeting state standards, having gone from around 90 micrograms per liter to just above state standards of 40, and something that we're continuing to track closely. On the north side of Lake Minnetonka, again, part of this upper watershed strategy to deal with the major tributaries, in the 12 square miles of Long Lake Creeks of watershed, which drains to impaired Long Lake and Tanager Bay, we've worked closely with the cities of Medina, Long Lake, Orono, and the 5013C, Long Lake Waters Association, to develop the 2023 Long Lake Creek Roadmap, which breaks the subwatershed into the management unit shown here for planning and implementation purposes. And it identifies 2 major regional stormwater management projects, one for the northern subwatershed and one for downtown Long Lake, as well as a suite of landscape restorations our partners can pursue on an opportunity or development basis with landowners, all of which are able to be pipelined into our capital plan through our Land and Water Partnership Program, and water bodies that may ultimately require internal load management. Downstream of Lake Minnetonka, the district spent the last 10 years in the Minnehaha Creek subwatershed, focused on realizing a grand vision for its greenway to restore almost 2 miles of the most degraded section of Minnehaha Creek along newly expanded, restored, and soon-to-be contiguous green space and trails, providing treatment for over 500 acres of regional stormwater from 3 communities of Hopkins, St. Louis Park, and Edina, as well as expanding the available floodplain storage and increasing the overall resilience of this part of the system. And that has entailed significant work at the Methodist Hospital campus, stormwater creek restoration and public asset access at the Minnehaha Preserve, regional stormwater, daylighting of the creek, and placemaking at Cottageville Park, and of course visioning and planning for 325 Blake Road, components of which are underway to treat over 270 acres of regional stormwater, all while connecting the upstream and downstream investments through new, inviting, and exciting places, anchored by the draw of Minnehaha Creek. And then a little bit further downstream, the 15-acre restoration of Arden Park, where we removed a dam, expanded flood storage, and treated 80 acres of regional stormwater. And that work, recognized this year on the front page of the Strib, has delivered measurable results for the creek and downstream Lake Hiawatha, which is, like Wasserman, also beginning to trend towards being delisted and serves as a mark of our principle of focus, geographic focus, and partnership. And for us, serves as a source of encouragement, I think, as we look into 2024 and begin venturing downstream with our city and park board partners into Minneapolis. As part of our 2-pronged strategy emphasizing not only capital projects, but shaping policy at the nexus of land and water, we recently delivered our climate action framework, which has now set 5-year policy direction for our 2027 watershed plan. By looking at the many threats and issues of climate change, bringing focus to how changing precipitation patterns will stress the watershed, both through bust and boom cycles, and evaluating that external situation against our organization's strengths and weaknesses, and defining a simple strategy of action which revolves around ongoing investments in our principles of being data-driven, building a 2D watershed climate model with LCCMR funds that will help us be able to understand and predict the future vulnerabilities within the watershed due to flooding, and then use that information to bring our partners together and develop a cohesive adaptation strategy for the watershed that both balances upstream and downstream needs through both capital investment and new policy. So now as we turn our attention to what lies ahead through the lens of the 2024 budget, there are consistent through lines from where I just showed you where we've been in recent years to where we're going, because much of that work that I just framed is being carried forward to completion in 2024 and beyond. From our Land and Water Partnership Program to capital improvements in 6 Mile Creek and Halstead Bay, Long Lake, the Greenway, and Minnehaha Parkway, to the build of our climate model as our data-driven strategy to build resilience within the watershed, and the base services that the district provides all of its communities and its taxpayers. Beginning with our 2024 capital improvement program, this slide shows the balance in our portfolio, from the upper watershed Lake Minnetonka strategy to the lower watershed focus on Minnehaha Creek. The interplay between local geography projects that are in pipeline, as well as land and water partnership projects, including those that are in the Long Lake Creek roadmap and are being funded with Clean Water Legacy funds in 2024. And the continued commitment to maintaining the regional stormwater ponds that we've already built that serve the chain of lakes. In 6 Mile Creek and Halstead Bay, as we take a closer look, we're moving downstream from the Pearson Marsh Wasserman Management Unit towards Auburn, towards the Auburn Wetland Restoration, which is on public land and under city control, and you've heard feasibility reports on recently. and into the tributary corridor of Turbid Lunston, where we want to restore wetlands and stream channel for water quality benefits in Carter Park Reserve, and of course downstream Holstead Bay, both of which are profiled as highlights in our budget publication that's part of the packet and sits on top of all the tables of budget information. Looking at how the Long Lake Creek roadmap will become actionable in 2024 and beyond, we've got County Road 6 Pond, which is a pond that is currently owned and operated by the district, where we're proposing a retrofit that will move from feasibility into design and construction next year, and clean water funds that have been allocated for the second of the 2 regional stormwater projects for Holbrook Park ponds that will be passed through to the city of Long Lake through our Land and Water Partnership Program. Within the lower watershed, of course, we have 2 areas of focus, both the completion of work in the Greenway and then beginning to move into the Parkway. And in the budget publication, we're highlighting the emphasis in the Greenway being on completion and connection, implementing the Southwest LRT stream enhancement, which is going to connect all of our upstream and downstream work along restored stream bank, and continuing to drive the multi-phase project of 325 Blake Road forward in concert with our partners, our city partner at the City of Hopkins, Hennepin County Metropolitan Council, and our development partner, Aladdis, to create place and treat hundreds of acres of regional stormwater. And then in the Parkway down in Minnehaha Creek, by the end of this year, we plan on issuing requests for proposals for feasibility for 3 major regional stormwater management and creek projects in conjunction with the City of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. And that work will then advance and position us next year to begin the design of those projects. And in terms of long-range planning and policy development, 2024 will mark the second of 2 years of LCCMR state funding for the build of our climate model, which will integrate land surface elevation, grid or stormwater pipe infrastructure, as well as groundwater. And that is going to give us and our partners the ability to assess watershed vulnerabilities 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future, so that we can develop both project and policy strategies to adapt and build resilience. So moving from our work plan to now take a look at the bottom line that supports all that work, the proposed 2024 budget of $14,486,255 represents a 1.2% increase over 2023. That year-over-year comparison will likely shift prior to adoption, pending the board's approval of the administrative budget amendment on tonight's agenda to account for spending for the preserve boardwalk that shifted schedule from 2022 to 2023. But the key take-home for tonight, I think, when considering the bottom line in the district's budget, is that there's 0 increase proposed in the district's tax levy. The levy will remain flat in 2024 at $9,869,513 due to the board's careful financial planning and levying into our capital projects over time, as well as securing grants year over year. And over the last 5 years, that's resulted in only a 2% levy increase, one of the last 5 years. So a consistent track record there on the tax levy. Taking a look at the breakdown for a moment, the 2024 capital budget of $6.29 million represents a fairly noticeable increase from 2023. Taking a moment to explain that, that's due largely just to the natural cycle of projects in development versus construction. And next year, this number includes $3.3 million for 325 Blake Road and Cottageville Park Phase 2, which represents about 50% of the total capital budget for next year. It also includes $1,060,000 for the maintenance dredging of Twin Lakes Pond and Amelia Pond to continue their function to remove pollutant loading to the Minneapolis chain of lakes. And then the remainder of the capital budget includes some of the projects that I've profiled: the Auburn Wetland Restoration, Turbid Lunston and 6 Mile Creek Holstead Bay, the County Road 6 Pond Retrofit in Long Lake, the Southwest LRT stream enhancement in the Greenway, and design work for the Minneapolis Parkway Partnership. $338,940 in 2 pass-through grants that the Watershed District secured for partners to fund both the Morningside Ravine stabilization for Medina in Painters Creek and Holbrook regional stormwater in Long Lake are also included in the CIP. And taking a moment to look at the grant revenue, that $338,000 in clean water grant shows up as about 38% of next year's total grant revenue, with the remaining $500,000 coming from LCCMR to support our climate model build. And that $881,000 sits in context to our average grant earnings each year of the last 5 years of around $1.2 million. So each of the last 5 years, we're pulling in about 8% of our budget in grant revenue. Not shown yet in grant earnings is the $200,000 award from Hennepin County, which we have confirmed will be applied to the Southwest Orchard Stream enhancement. That will bring our grant earnings in 2024 to $1 million, not the $881,000 shown here. You know, that's just happened within the last several weeks. And so there'll be adjustment made there as the grant agreements are routed this year as we track towards the truth in taxation hearing later in the calendar year. Also not shown on the grant side is the Certified Public Facilities Authority funding for 325 Blake Road, which now, following the bonding bill last session, is fully funded all the way down through our list of projects and will be awarded on a reimbursement basis. So Public Facilities Authority has certified 80% reimbursement of our eligible expenses for stormwater. So for the total project, including our stormwater work and Lattice's work, there is approximately $3.7 million total for the project, with approximately 1.85 of that eligible against our pond costs of 2.1 million. So based on timing, that revenue is going to end up being factored into subsequent fiscal years as we get more concrete on the schedule for implementation and our reimbursement timelines for stormwater management for Blake Road. But wanted to make mention of the grant earnings that aren't showing up on the books as we talk about the budget through the public hearing lens. So next, as part of our capital project implementation, we have capital finance or debt service. The public is going to see a 74% decrease in scheduled debt service payments between 23 and 24 from 4.2 million to just under 1.1 million. That's due to the scheduled retirement of the outstanding note for 325 Blake Road that will get paid off in 2023. This is covered in attachment 11, so students of our debt service schedule are going to note that future annual debt payments are stabilizing roughly at around $1 million each year thereafter, pending us taking on additional debt for future capital projects. Not shown in that part of the budget right now are potential sale proceeds. Just like grant revenue, we only count those or account for those when they're secured. We've received $1 million so far in 22, and the purchase and sale agreement for the rest of the takedown for 325 Blake Road would see us generating another $10.2 million in sale proceeds. And again, those would show up as potential revenue at the time of close. In operations and support services, my home turf, there's some relatively modest changes there of 1.5%, which span things like building expenses, insurance, base consulting costs for our consultants, legal, engineering, accounting, board managers' expenses, our technology, and campus improvements. So now turning to our programs which support policy and projects, research and monitoring shows here a 2.7% increase in 2024, but research and monitoring is broken into research and monitoring's direct costs as one subfund, which are decreasing 10%, and a separate subfund to account for the LCCMR grant funded activities, and those are increasing 38% and are fully funded by state dollars. So while there is an increase in the summary shown, I just wanted to make note that our direct research and monitoring costs next year are down around $100,000. Project planning in 2024 is proposed to increase just over $50,000. Priorities in this part of the work plan include all the projects that I just mentioned: feasibility and planning dollars for 6 Mile Creek, Halsted Bay, the Greenway in Minneapolis. And turning to policy, as our policy planning team, Becky, Kate, and Alex begin to operationalize our land and water partnership, advance our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and begin to implement our climate action strategy, including next year, convening our city and regional partners, there's a proposed 2.9% increase or $17,000 increase there. Permitting is showing a 5% increase in 2024. This includes 10,000 increase in engineering expenses based on 5-year running average, as well as for personnel costs, which are based on current assumptions around program staffing and the recently adopted classification and compensation study, which are factored into all the programs that I'm taking through here. And then finally, we have outreach, which has a 4% reduction. That's simply based on our efforts over the last several years to keep focusing and tightening up our strategy for engaging the broader community and communication that supports both our capital work and our policy implementation. So just one quick step back before I wrap here. If you zoom out, take our programs in aggregate, which sometimes we do, 2024 proposes a net decrease of 2.7% or around $145,000 for our programs in total, while I think continuing to deliver the aligned results that the public's come to expect from the district. So hopefully with some background context on our vision or our why, and how and where we've deployed our strategy in the last several years, what we've accomplished, and what we plan to keep accomplishing with the 2024 budget, with a strong financial position and no increase in the levy, I'm hoping we've painted a decently clear picture of the proposed allocation for spending for tonight's public hearing. And with that, I'd ask President White to run our public hearing and just remind the public that we'll collect any and all feedback tonight, but we can collect feedback offline too, and we'll digest and process that leading up to September 14th, and then continue our efforts to refine the budget as we track towards the end of the year, where we'll hold one last public comment period late in November before we send everything over in final form to the counties in December.
Thank you, Mr. Wesker. There are no public members here, but have we already received any comments from the public?
No comments thus far.
Okay. Very well, thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing.
Thank you.
I just got a comment.
Go ahead.
The clarity of this presentation is just delightful. I know there's we've gone through all the support numbers that background all these different categories, but just this, the clarity is just superb, and your management of the budget is just incredible, James. I want to really thank you on behalf of the board for the hard work you've done on getting us to where we are, because I don't, you know, we don't need to go where we were, back to where we were to explain the quality of this effort and presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the board's made it exceptionally easy.
Well, I want to duplicate those comments, but also say that having been on the board for about a decade now, it's really interesting to watch this and see, remembering improvements made by staff, made by board member suggestions, and how it all gets continuously improving by all of us working together.
Thank you.
We have item 11.1, which is resolution 23047. Mr. Wolf presenting.
You're just trying to make James look good.
Move the box around here, sorry about that. Okay. Good evening, President White, Board of Managers. Tonight we have an administrative approval to shift funds from one budget year to the next to reflect the year in which they were actually spent. Typically this would be on the consent agenda, but due to the size of the adjustment, I wanted to take the opportunity to walk the board through the process. Often with large capital projects, the budget projection process spans multiple years and the functional cost of projects increases and decreases with time, materials, labor, etc. So the boardwalk reconstruction project was budgeted and designed on an expedited timeline following an investigation into the extent of the degradation. Based on conversation with legal counsel, the district pursued reconstruction of the boardwalk while concurrently seeking damages from the original contractor. The reconstruction project was subsequently budgeted in May 2021 based on opinion of probable costs from the district engineer for the projected total of $1.6 million. The project was projected to be constructed during the following winter, with the cost split between the 2 years from November 2022 to March 2023. In November of 2021, the board directed staff to develop an RFP to reconstruct the boardwalk, and then in March of 2022, the board approved a contract to design the boardwalk reconstruction. In November of 2022, the final construction contract was approved by the board for $1.8 million. Construction was projected to begin in November of 2022, but did not. None of the funds projected for 2022 were used, and the 2022 project maintenance and land management budget shows a $1.3 million budget surplus. Construction began in February of 2023 and continues. In the meantime, litigation funds were received, deposited in the project fund, and are being applied to the project budget. The 2023 project budget now shows a $1.3 million deficit. So we're requesting an administrative action to shift the 2022 monies, which remain in the project fund, and litigation funds, which are also in the project fund, to the 2023 construction budget to account for the year in which the funds were actually spent, for a total budget amendment of $1,623,000. And, oh my gosh, $1,623,612.
That's my usual trick.
There's too many sixes and, anyway. Because the money budgeted for 2022 remains in the project fund, a transfer is not needed. The 2023 budget will then equal the project contract total. So, project maintenance and land management hereby recommends the Board of Managers amend the 2023 project maintenance and land management budget, I have to do it again, by $1,623,612.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move rule.
Manager Miller, second Manager Hejmati. Voting now, or I'm sorry, are there questions for Mr. Wolf before we go to the vote? Voting then on adopting the resolution, Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
And Manager White also votes aye. Resolution's approved. Next up, we have item 11.2, which is Resolution 2348. Ms. Mall.
All right. Well, good evening, President White, Board of Managers. Tonight, I am absolutely delighted to be before you for this exciting milestone. Resolution 23-048 is before you to authorize the launch of NCW's new website. So if you authorize the resolution tonight, we will prepare to launch the new site on Monday, August 28th. So tonight, I will briefly review the new website's goals. I'll share some of the beta testing feedback that we received and some of the revisions that were the result of those suggestions. I'll preview the new site and then talk through some of the ongoing site maintenance considerations. Then finally, we'll wrap up by talking through how we'll communicate the site's launch with some of the stakeholders in the watershed, and then I'll accept any questions. So I'll remind you of the 3 core goals of the website because these are really key to understanding and evaluating the new site's content strategy. So So our first goal is quite simple, connecting people to the information that they want. And we've positioned the highest traffic pages like water levels, permits, and paddling information on the homepage in primary navigation pillars and cross-linked throughout the site so people can easily find what they came for. Our second goal revolves around telling our stories. So in contrast to the current website, where our vision and strategic pillars are diffuse or buried, the new site weaves our vision of balanced urban ecology, capital projects, and our invitation to partnership intuitively throughout the site. The third goal speaks to our focus on curated, impactful content. And the new site is really designed so that visitors can easily find what they need, discover what sets us apart, and find new ways to connect with what we do. So when we had the new site fully built out, we decided to put it to the test and ensure that it was ready for the public. So during the general testing process, we received feedback from 7 NCWD staff members, 4 CAC members, 11 trusted external advisors, and 6 board members, for a total of 28 participants, in the beta testing process. And we asked testing participants to provide feedback and suggestions on things like the site's design, its navigation, the content throughout, and we also asked testing participants to indicate their level of agreement with 3 statements that were aimed to assess the site's delivery on its initial goals. So the first of those statements was, the website is user-friendly. This conclusion assessed whether the site was effectively connecting users with the information they want, quickly and intuitively. And as you can see on the chart here, 96% of participants indicated agreement or strong agreement with this statement that the website is user-friendly. Our next statement was, this website is easy to navigate. And this assessed whether the site was focusing on the most important content, because we didn't really want users to feel like they're wading through irrelevant information to find what they need. And as you can see here, we had 100% agreement with this conclusion. Our final goal-oriented statement was, the website captures NCWD's brand. We wanted to know if this new site tells our story and communicates who we are and what we do in a clear and engaging way. 89% of participants agreed with this statement, but we did have 3 participants mark neutral, but nobody indicated any disagreement. Moving on, in addition to some of those Likert scale questions I just shared, we also asked a few optional questions to help inform decisions on specific revisions to the website that the team was already considering. So the first of these was a question related to the design and functionality of the Grays Bay Dam operations figure, and that was internally developed by our team. Brian Beck led the charge on that, so kudos to him. You can see from the data here that we had a bit of a spread on that figure, so we did take the opportunity to redesign it slightly after the testing process. And I'll preview the new version of it in a few minutes when we get to the site. We also asked about the display of footer headings. Prior to the testing period, we received some concerns from staff on whether the footer section headings were obviously clickable. And the responses here were overwhelmingly yes, so we decided not to make any changes to the display of section headers in the footer. Finally, we asked about the organization of the Explore pillar. Back in March, Manager Loftus had noted that the Explore pillar's content could be split into 2 separate pillars, one for data and one for recreation. While there was a bit of a spread in responses to this question, the majority did select leaving the Explore pillar as is. So that's what we did. So it is still a curated hub of both recreation information and data. However, you'll notice across the Explore pillar and all the other primary navigation pillars, we do have a little narrative description of what's in each section of the website. So we're doing our best to make it clear.
Can you clarify? I don't know what a pillar, Explore pillar organization, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's just a section of the website.
Okay.
So the Explore would be the heading of that section, and it houses some of the interactive data features that I'll tool through here shortly.
Thank you.
Overall, as you can see from the data that I shared, participants agree that the new site effectively delivers on its goals. But participants also noted some critical feedback to help refine the site for launch. It looks like a lighter screen on the second line, but that's okay. We received many suggestions to improve the user experience on many of the site's interactive features. This included specific suggestions like revising the search criteria on search projects and clarifying the no data return for the water quality dashboard, just to name a couple. So based on this feedback, we did refine the design of features like search projects, the Grace Bay Dam operations figure, water quality, Am I in the district, and watershed strategies, just to address any bugs and increase their user friendliness. We also included more links out to additional data sources, both external and internal, like MCWD's GIS data hub. A few testing participants also noted that About MCWD content may be challenging to find because it's in the site's footer. While this is a valid observation, it was also intentional. Content within the footer was determined based on the site's content strategy, and according to traffic and audience data, pages like About MCWD, the Board of Managers, and committees receive less traffic from the public than pages like Paddle the Creek, permits, and projects. So that data influenced where each of those pages was positioned on the new website. However, we do want to provide a clear path for users to learn more about the watershed, so we added more cross-links to About MCWD and some of the other footer content pages where appropriate on the site's main areas. We also heard feedback that some of the photos that were used on filler pages were too small, which diminished their impact. So we did incorporate a larger layout for photos on the site's main pages to better showcase our projects and our partnership approach. And finally, many testing participants noted some typos, broken links, and other adjustments that must be addressed before launching the site to the public. So this review was incredibly helpful for ensuring quality content across the site before launch. So as a result, staff conducted some minor revisions to text, buttons, fixed broken links, and addressed any other errors that were called out by testing participants. All right, from here, I will put some of these suggestions and revisions into practice by showing you the new site. All right. So we have to reshare with Jean. There we go. So starting here on the home page, we, as you'll remember, link to some of our most trafficked pages right here at the top. This page also profiles who we are by highlighting our vision of bounce-driven ecology and how we achieve it. It also connects visitors with some of our main areas. So the rest of the site is structured into 5 user-friendly pillars: our approach, partnerships, projects, explore, and permits. I'll briefly step through our approach. This area of the site really sets up our why by introducing balanced urban ecology and how we achieve it through projects and policy. It also connects visitors to some of the documents that are the foundation of our work, like our watershed management plan and our climate action framework, which is the roadmap for our future. Moving over to partnerships, this pillar includes our partnerships landing page, seen here, where we describe why partnership is our fundamental approach and explain how we create shared benefit by partnering on projects through the Land and Water Partnership Program, permitting, and our focal geography approach. And you can see that new, larger photo layout in action here on this page. Also in this pillar is a page for the Land and Water Partnership Program, where we explain the purpose, goals, and process of the program, as well as showcase some of the program's pilot projects. Stepping over to projects now, this pillar really is a resume of experience, and it includes information on our 2 focal geographies, as well as an area where site visitors can explore our resume of over 30 capital projects around the watershed. And we did make a couple small tweaks to this search projects filter just to make it a little easier to use. So next we'll move over to our Explore pillar, which is a curated hub of data and recreation information. And because this pillar houses the most interactive and development-heavy features, it really underwent the most testing and therefore the most revisions. Across this pillar, you'll notice as I step through these pages that we've also added more links to external data and recreation information. So we'll start with water quality. So staff received numerous requests for water quality data and lake grade throughout the year. And this interactive feature, right here, attempts to answer some of those questions by providing users with curated data on the phosphorus, chlorophyll, and water quality concentrations in all of the lakes in the watershed. On this page, we made a few tweaks. One such being we improved the no data return. We also filled some of the gaps in the data so all lakes are represented in some way. And we changed the color of the outline. Maybe you remember it used to be red. This was mostly done so that users wouldn't confuse the outline color with colors corresponding to the ecosystem health key. Moving over to another area of Explorer, we'll dive into watershed strategies. Now, watershed strategies is an interactive story map, there it goes, which visualizes our watershed management plan in an engaging way. It allows visitors to explore all of the physical and hydrological details on each of the sub-watersheds in the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and outlines the issues, drivers, and strategies for each of them. On this page, we conducted some minor revisions to the story map and documented some great ideas for improving this feature post-launch. You'll see on this page, like a lot of others, that we've added some of those external data links down here at the bottom. And this just provides users with easy access to data resources that aren't housed on our website. Next, we'll take a look at water levels, which seeks to communicate how water flows through the watershed by visualizing the flow between the upper watershed, Lake Minnetonka, and of course, Minnehaha Creek into the Mississippi River. We often hear frustrated members of the public voicing concerns over the impact of Grays Bay Dam on water levels, especially in drought years like we've been experiencing. So this figure tries to contextualize the story by acknowledging factors like precipitation, evaporation, and even land use. So if you click on Lake Minnetonka, for example, you can see the precipitation received over the last 1 day, 5 days, and 7 days, and see how evaporation plays into the lake's current level. Complementing water levels, we have some pages on the Grays Bay Dam. So we'll head over there next. So on the Grays Bay Dam landing page, we have an overview of the dam and our operating plan, a quick glance at some of the current conditions. Farther down, we highlight how data-driven partnerships optimize our dam operations, and then link out to 2 separate pages, one being historical context, which houses a interactive story map on the history of the Grays Bay Dam, and the other, which is a deep dive into the dam's operations plan. And on this dam operations page, we have a great interactive feature that was built out by Brian Beck. And this was redesigned slightly post-testing to improve functionality and improve the user experience. Users can explore different years of data, 2022 for example, and they can click the buttons above to compare Lake Minnetonka's elevation to the historic median. On hover over, they can see the Lake Minnetonka elevation, Grays Bay Dam discharge, and what discharge zone we're in according to the dam's operating plan. Pretty cool. And you can see here that last summer, when we closed the dam, Lake Minnetonka's water level continued to decline as a result of evaporation. So that's an important story to tell to the public with this interactive feature. Users can also click dam route elevation and dam spillway elevation to see the levels at which we lose control of the flow out of Lake Minnetonka. Okay, heading back over to the Explore page here, we do have 2 more features, Paddle the Creek and Watershed Places, but no major revisions have been made to either page, so I won't go onto each one and walk you through them. But you'll remember that Paddle the Creek has information for planning your kayaking or canoeing trip, including ideal creek conditions and access locations. Watershed Places has an interactive map of parks and trails. And actually, during the testing period, we collected some new ideas for different park and trail locations to add to that map after launch. So finally, we'll review the permitting pillar. And this pillar includes a landing page, a page on our regulations, which will eventually house our new rules once they're adopted, and then a FAQ page for permitting specific questions. The landing page quickly connects folks to the permitting portal. A convenient screening tool allows them to read our regulations, and of course connects them right to our permitting team members so they can contact us if they need help navigating the permitting process. We did make some minor revisions post-testing to improve the accuracy of the permitting screening tool and the permitting FAQ page. So I'll note those as well. Permitting is the last pillar in our primary navigation menu, but there is of course more content to explore in the site's footer down here. So this has most of our administrative content like meetings and agendas, but you'll also see that in the About NCWD section, we have information on who we are, our history, and our people, as well as information on our finances, reports, and opportunities for employment. Our newsroom provides a hub of timely articles, education, blogs, water level updates, and even some of our recent media features. Under this pillar, we also have space for our public notices and then posting requests for proposals. In the calendar, we display our upcoming and past events and house our meetings and agendas feed, which has all of the board packet information. And then finally, Get Involved is a pillar that showcases options for how residents can get involved with our work, including joining the CAC, attending public meetings, exploring volunteer opportunities with our partners, and implementing best practices at home. That's all I will show of the website currently. I'll switch back over and wrap up the presentation. So, if you approve the resolution before you tonight, we will plan to launch the site at noon on Monday, August 28th. However, our work won't end there. The website is a dynamic communications tool, and as such, actions must be taken to ensure its continued value. Therefore, staff have created a framework for site maintenance and enhancement, which was included in your packet. This framework includes 3 main service areas, the first being site management and maintenance, content updates being the second, and then site enhancements thirdly. So site management and maintenance includes baseline actions to maintain the site's security and performance. These include things like updating the content management system and plugins, performing backups, improving accessibility, testing links and forms. And these duties will be split between the outreach program and the site's managed service provider, George, whose contract you authorized back in June. As MCWD's projects, initiatives, and strategy advances, website content must also be updated to maintain the content's relevance and make use of the website as a communications asset. So some of these content updates are routine, like uploading board packets, creating public notices, and updating committee information, but others sit within the context of a project's communications plan. So for capital projects and policy initiatives, outreach will work with program staff to update or develop new content that best supports that project's communications goals. In addition to content updates, there may also be new enhancements that we'd like to add to the site after launch. These include new features or functionalities that may require support from a web developer to create. We received some enhancement ideas through the beta testing process, and we'll continue to take new ideas after the site launches as well. Enhancement ideas like adding an archive of board resolutions, adding project pins to the local geography page maps, which was a suggestion shared by Manager Olson at one point, and adding captions to photos across the site will all be considered based on criteria like alignment with the organization's brand, mission, and strategy, stakeholder impact, and of course, maintaining alignment with the goals of our new website. Once prioritized, these enhancements will be implemented internally where possible or with a contracted web developer, as I mentioned. By continually maintaining and enhancing the website, we can ensure that the next website rebuild, which unfortunately is inevitable because technology continues to change, will be a much more efficient process. All right, when the board approved the draft website for beta testing back in June, managers Miller and Maxwell noted the importance of sharing the launch of the website with county and municipal partners. So to share the news, staff have created a simple communications plan that includes a series of social media posts, an email distributed to staff at municipal, county, and state agency partners, and an announcement on the current site, which you may have already seen actually. We also link the site's new pages. We're going to do so in our next water level update and continue to promote and integrate the new website into our other communications projects. These communications will help share the new website and everything it has to offer to the public and to our partners, many of whom use the website as a resource. All right, I'll take any questions as you consider the resolution before you.
Thank you, Ms. Mall. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Manager Olson moves. Is there a second?
Hejmati second.
Manager Hijmati seconds. Question?
Just a comment, I haven't been involved in this, and wasn't exposed to it before. I'm really impressed with it. But as I often say, I consume my environment through my windshield, and it would be good if we could, on one of those maps, we'd show public lands, preserves, and parks, because I mean, it's just incredible when you see the county stuff and Three Rivers and the city stuff. It's really impressive, and I've never seen it in one place before. It seems to me it would be very helpful for the normal consumer like myself, that isn't seeking permits or anything, to see an assembly of that.
Yeah,
On a map.
That is one of the primary goals of Watershed Places, which was a piece of the Explore Flow that I didn't show today. But that includes, trails and parks and public lands that you can explore. Of course, we're still building out what it encompasses, but things like the Carver Park Reserve, any of our project sites like Arden Park and Cottage Park are all listed on there, alongside some other recreation opportunities. But very important conservation. I appreciate your comment.
Anything else from Ms. Mall? Who's excited?
Very good.
Yes, we've,
Long haul.
yeah.
Manager Hijmati.
Yeah. We've come down a very long road. Bill, I appreciate all the guidance that you've been giving on this and the wonderful work that you and your team have done. This is a really great website. Thank you.
Just a comment that I would like to make. Some of the staff here have been extremely active on doing a lot of work for this website. It wasn't something that we hired somebody from the outside to do and left it for them. And none of those functions really are in anybody's job description. So the way that people rose up from their seats and took the bull by the horns and just kept pushing, you guys are amazing. And it allowed a great deal of comfort on everybody's part. We had a goal of having it done by a certain date based on external pressures that went away, and we wound up with one heck of a tremendous product. Way better than personally I was expecting we would be able to pull off. So for a government organization to have this kind of a caliber product is just spectacular. So thank you, and thank you. Those are great things that we are now benefiting from. And I really appreciate that everybody just somehow got it done, and we have now something to really be proud of.
Any other comments before we vote? All right, then, voting on adopting the resolution. Manager Hijmati.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Loftus. And Manager White votes aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Go Monday.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, we have item 11.3, Resolution 2349. This will be presented by Ms. Castro and Ms. Cermak, but I wanted to recognize Mr. Beck as well for comments to the board before or after, your choice.
All right. Good evening, President White, Board of Managers. I'm here tonight regarding equipment purchases that are going to allow us to kind of complete on our original vision for the real-time sensor network. I'm here tonight seeking action on two separate resolutions. The first is authorizing us to enter into an equipment purchase agreement with Hennepin County that allows us to receive pass-through funding from FEMA to support a portion of the resident equipment. The second resolution is a request for $23,500 for resident equipment and essentially gap funding for the portion of equipment that was ultimately not awarded through the FEMA grant. Recognizing it has been about 2+ years since I've been in front of you directly speaking about ResNet, so we want to take some time on the front end to kind of really remind the board why we pursued this initiative. I'll walk you through kind of what our original funding strategy was for the initiative, and then I'm going to turn it over to Marissa to kind of highlight some of the work that we've accomplished to date and kind of reveal some behind the scenes on how it's operationalized. And then I will walk you through what has been close to a 4-year process for the FEMA grant and kind of explain why we're here tonight requesting gap funding. So if you can kind of think back and remember the time when we had excess water, 2014 was a flood of record, and really I think caught us a bit on our heels, a bit unprepared, and we hadn't experienced an event like that before. But we really took that as a learning experience, really took time to reflect and think about how we can implement changes to be better prepared in the future. One of those implemented changes was the formation of what we call our Grays Bay Dam Partnership. It's a multi-agency partnership with the National Weather Service, Hennepin County, and USGS. It allows us now to have tailored weather forecasts for the watershed. We then have real-time precipitation that's falling at multiple stations across the watershed through Hennepin County's Mesonet stations. And then, of course, 2 USGS stations you can see highlighted here in purple at kind of critical components along Minnehaha Creek. But following 2014, we still continued to experience wet years above average precipitation, and we were still feeling like we had kind of a gap in the information, specifically regarding kind of live water level and flow conditions to support dam operations. We were really relying on Research and Monitoring's discrete measurements that we were taking on a bi-weekly basis. And you can kind of see here, with discrete measurements, you're really left interpolating and guessing what's happening between those 2 weeks. And when you layer on a continuous, 5-minute resolution sensor, you can see kind of the amount of volume and those peak water levels that we are missing when just doing discrete data. So we really started exploring what it would look like to roll out more of these continuous stations watershed-wide. And I think when we really sat down and put pen to paper, we realized if we thought about this really thoughtfully, brought in our partners, we had a chance to really stack benefits here from kind of this one sensor network idea. We started by making sure we had kind of budget set aside to cover the set of equipment. So we put aside $175,000 in 2020 to purchase the equipment necessary, realizing that we'd have to spend kind of the second half of 2019 refining what exactly it would take to do that. We then wanted to stress test this idea with our partners. We brought this idea to that Grays Bay Dam Partnership group. Heads were nodding, and we quickly realized that Hennepin County was actually in the process of pursuing the exact same thing along Minnehaha Creek. So a clear and obvious place for us to join together and partner. And they had identified a grant through FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program to cover equipment and sites along Minnehaha Creek as part of kind of a flood alert system. And so the county really looked to the district to guide where these sensors should go and kind of what the important areas are. So we first started thinking about the watershed and locations with our internal needs kind of layered in, so which sites we needed for dam operations, and then wanted to reach out to all of our partner communities along the creek and learn about where there's areas of concern, where we've experienced frequent flooding, and kind of start layering those into the network as well. This map kind of highlights where we originally landed with the 25 locations. You can see kind of all the major tributaries into Lake Minnetonka are captured, and of course a high resolution along Minnehaha Creek where we see kind of the flashy changes in response to storms. And I'll zoom in on that for you too. And through that, once we actually had kind of defined our locations, we started looking into the equipment needs for each of those locations, and we were able to kind of refine that budget further, bringing it to $155,000 to implement those 25 locations. And so with Hennepin County's interest in pursuing the FEMA grant, they were specifically interested in this alert system along Minnehaha Creek. So they were just targeting those 15 stations along the creek. Also, this grant was really targeting the water level technology and that real-time kind of alert system. And so the grant really only factored in those equipment types, whereas the district, we had some broader interests in water quality and some more complex equipment. So the grant was submitted in fall of 2019 by the county. So it covered the 15 sites and came in at just over $41,000 with a 25% match the county would be bringing forward. That left 10 sites in the upper watershed primarily, along with some more specialized kind of water quality centric equipment that the district would need to cover to kind of round out that initial vision for the 25 stations. And so we brought forward this request for this equipment amount of $113,000 in January of 2020 as soon as those budgeted funds were available. And with the grant in limbo and kind of in waiting, and this equipment coming in the mail that we had ordered, we knew we had a lot of work ahead of us, and we're really excited to kind of hit the ground running and start working. So I'm going to turn it over to Marissa here. It is her first board presentation, but unfortunately also her last. It's her last day with the district today, but ResNet really has been her baby ever since she started, and so there's no better person to kind of walk you through the work it's taken to get ResNet where it is. So I'll turn it over to you.
So, as Haley said, I kind of came in with the goal of implementing ResNet. And so, what does it take to implement ResNet? So, when I came in, we kind of took this project and broke it down into three main buckets of work, which we can generally categorize into infrastructure and equipment installation, data processing, and finally, data visualization. So, working through those, first with infrastructure and equipment installation, the first step to implementing ResNet and the process was ensuring we build sound infrastructure that would house and protect the sensors that we're investing in. And so this included gaining property permissions from landowners, obtaining permits where needed, and ultimately constructing the infrastructure at their sites. The distinct challenge in the installation process, however, is that each location is very unique in their hydrography and their accessibility, so it often required specified setup and to ensure we were getting reliable data at each location. And the pictures shown here are just to give you an example of the wide range of types of equipment that we utilize and the different types of installation designs that each site has. That next component of the implementation process is really the big chunk of it, I would say, was the data processing component. So ultimately, when we go into this, we had three goals in mind before we set out to engineer this component. The first was to have a completely automated workflow that moved data from the field to our database as quickly as possible. The next goal was to build something, to build a replicable framework that we could scale up and execute across our different locations. And the last was to develop a deep understanding at a staff level of these processes so that we can better improve it later down the road. So working through this data processing, again, the sensors are out in the field and they have their cell equipment telemetry and they're out there collecting data and sending it to us. So what do we do once we have all of these sensors sending us data? Well, the next major feat was really to develop codes and scripts that not only automate the data pipeline, but applied critical quality assurance and quality control checks to ensure that this data was reliable and accurate. And just to give you a little snippet of some fun codes that we get to write, but really, again, building something that we can, again, apply to all of our sensors. And the final step is of the data processing component is getting those scripts then to immediately place those data sets into storage so that they are readily accessible to us. So ultimately, the hardest part was designing this process and this workflow that I just walked through. But the fun part now is utilizing this data to come up with unique and powerful ways to tell different stories. And so with that, I want to give you 3 examples of how this data, the same underlying set of water level data is being utilized to visualize data in different ways. So the first of our data visualization tools is our internal ResNet dashboard that displays water and flow conditions at all of our sites across the watershed. And this tool is particularly useful to our project and land maintenance staff as they use it to understand current conditions in the watershed and also to make decisions about dam operations. The next tool I'd like to refer to as my baby's babysitter. Here's why. When we started to expand the number of ResNet locations, it became increasingly more challenging to manage. So with that, built an internal tool that allows us to succinctly relay the status of each site in a way that we can efficiently guide our field staff and then remedy any issues that arise in a timely manner. And so this is refreshed every 5 minutes. And then the last of our data visualization, and that we can see it utilized, is from our freshly approved website. The same real-time data that powers the last 2 dashboards that I showed you also feeds into this interactive water levels webpage in a way that tells you a visually compelling data-driven story. And so with that, as we continue to define ResNet and we add more sensors and more capabilities, we can continue to tell compelling stories with these data sets. And so I'm going to hand it back to Kaylee to talk through the FEMA grant process.
Yep. Okay, we'll start the journey here. So 2019 in fall is when Hennepin County submitted the original application. So a reminder, just over $41,000, covering 15 sites along Minnehaha Creek. FEMA didn't actually start reviewing that initial application until fall of 2021. You can recall over that 2-year period there were a lot of national crises happening, and that was kind of the reason, the large reason for kind of that intense delay. But as you heard from Marissa, during that 2-year period we were continuing to drive forward on the components that we could to kind of set the stage. Once FEMA started actually reviewing the application, we started doing some back and forth, some information requests, and we discovered that any locations that had any sort of infrastructure prep work done to them actually made the site ineligible for funding. And so while the grant ask was only for the equipment itself, not for labor, not for infrastructure costs, FEMA needs to have full control over where that equipment is going and how it's going to be mounted, for example. They were willing to get a little creative. They saw the value in what we were trying to do. And so they were willing to let Hennepin County submit a revised application for any of the sites that were still eligible. So in the end, 5 sites were able to still be eligible for funding out of that original 15. And when we kind of resubmitted or re-requested quotes for those particular 5 sites, that came to just about $20,000. Good news, we have made it through the review process. Everything's been signed, it's fully executed and authorized to receive that $20,000 as of January of this year. But that still leaves 10 locations from that original grant ask that are unfunded. And so staff took a look this year at what we have for equipment inventory. We've accrued some spares and kind of setups along the way. And when we kind of paired that with the needs of these remaining 10 locations, we ultimately need kind of 7 setups to complete that kind of final vision of those 25 sites. And that comes to just over $23,000. This map here kind of shows kind of a breakdown of where the FEMA funded locations, so those gold locations along the creek, in contrast to the blue, which we are requesting funding for tonight through district dollars. One thing to note about these kind of remaining 10 locations is that primarily these are all stations that our partners have requested during our kind of initial planning process, sites that they saw value in. Quick summary table here just on what Hennepin County now is providing through pass-through funding, and of course still that 25% match. What the district spent back in 2020, 113, and then what's in front of you tonight is a request for $23,100. So 2 separate actions tonight. Resolution 23049 is authorization to enter into that equipment purchase agreement with Hennepin County. This agreement has a very small scope. We decided that it was best for equipment warranties if the district actually makes the purchase versus Hennepin County. And so we are making the purchase, and this agreement really just outlines that the county will reimburse the district for that cost. The second resolution 23050 is authorization to purchase another set of equipment to kind of gap fund what FEMA is not able to bring us towards that original 25 locations, and that amount is projected not to exceed $23,500. So President White, I'll maybe let you decide if you want to discuss one at a time or both. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Let's have a motion on 2349 to begin with.
So moved.
Manager
Maxwell moves
Hejmadi?
to approve.
I'll take your second, Manager Maxwell. Questions for staff? Then, go ahead.
What's the difference between your estimated and your NTE on there? What is that $5,000 or $6,000 variable there?
Oh, sure. President White, Manager Loftus, I do want to clarify. So the resolution on the left is for, there's 2 purchases taking place. So the purchase on the left is estimated to be around $17,500. That will be reimbursed through FEMA grant funds that the county will pass to the district in reimbursement. We have a second equipment purchase on the table, $23,500 that we are requesting to fund through district funding. And together, those 2 sets of equipment will allow us to reach that original vision for the 25 sites.
Okay. So the 10 sites that FEMA didn't fund that we were hopeful for are the 23?
Yes.
And the 17.5 is the 5 that they did fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? All right then, calling for a vote on the resolution. Manager Maxwell?
Aye.
Manager Miller?
Aye.
Manager Sando?
Aye.
Manager Loftus?
Aye.
Manager Hejmadi?
Aye.
Manager Olson?
Aye.
And Manager White votes aye. That is approved. Now on resolution 2350, is there a motion?
Move approval.
Manager Miller, I was looking at Manager Hejmadi. Manager Miller moves and Manager Hejmadi seconds. Any questions or discussion on this? Manager Loftus?
One quick comment. I have not seen not to exceeds for contractors used here, and I'm happy to see it, so thank you. I think they're kind of best practices as far as contractors and a good accountability measure for keeping things in budget. So I'm happy to see contracts and bids using that best practices. So thank you.
Anything else before we vote?
Where is the metering on the Schutz Creek?
President White, Manager Olson, it is near, on private property, essentially tucked back right before it enters Smithtown Bay.
So it's on the,
Get the name of that.
it's on the lake side of the little,
Yeah, so it's
bridge.
downstream of Schutz Lake, just before it goes into Lake Minnetonka.
Yeah.
Virginia Curve,
okay.
right before it hits the dirt road.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's, I appreciate that, thank you.
Anything else? Then voting on Resolution 50, Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
Manager Olson,
Aye.
Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Loftus.
Aye.
Manager White also votes aye. Resolution is adopted. Thank you.
Brian, I'll-
Mr. Beck.
All right, President White, Board Managers, thank you. I want to take a moment to thank and acknowledge Marissa Castro for her contributions to Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, and bid her farewell as she embarks on a journey to California for a newfound career as a hydrologist in the private sector, which is really exciting. I want to take this moment because Marissa is one of the unsung heroes that you don't see very often in front of the board, being her kind of first and last presentation. Marissa started.
Is there a message in it?
Marissa started with the district in 2021, and during her tenure as an MCWT technician, Marissa was brought an ability to learn on the job and really think critically and bring things that were conceptual to fruition, as you guys just saw. I think the biggest workload that she had was the real-time sensor network, affectionately named ResNet, and Marissa's meticulous work on that project and her ability to bring her expertise and her ability to think critically and learn on the job to fund or to support different projects such as the watershed-wide climate model that we're building, in addition to making our website work with interactive data that's actually being pipelined from the sensors she built in the field to our database and then onto the website, which is really, really fun. And this really showcased a lot of different strengths of Marissa, which included continuous improvement, which was not knowing how to code really at the beginning and then just learning how to do it. In addition to ingenuity, Marissa said that the code or the dashboard she created was she created a system to monitor the system that she built, which is, I think, a monumental achievement in itself. And lastly, an eye for design. I think we just saw not only from presentations that she built, which are clear and also aesthetically pleasing, into the finest details, which are being excited about the paint for the paint colors of different sites that she installed. So I think Marissa's contributions also went well beyond ResNet. She played a critical role in doing data collection, for example, for the East Auburn wetland, which we're seeing go towards design, and the County Road 6 pond stormwater sampling, which are going towards design. So I think these data sets that are collected, a lot of times we don't see how they're collected or who they're collected by, but they really form the foundation of design for these really important projects that we have. And lastly, Marissa brought just intangible qualities to the district. For example, bringing the ability to bring people together and also just give support to others when they need it. And so Marissa's going to leave a legacy of a lot of different things, including real-time sensor network that we're going to be using on a day-to-day basis, I guess a 5-minute basis. But also a legacy of, for example, leaving a phone or two behind in the lake, which maybe 7 months later, with maybe any other equipment.
Is that an illicit discharge?
I guess we'd have to calculate concentrations. But so as
moves into her new role across the country. I want to thank her for bringing professionalism, positivity, and passion that have left a mark on our team and organization. So on behalf of MCWD and Research and Monitoring, I want to hope you the best and the obvious success that you'll have moving forward. And thank you for everything you've done for us, and just wish you the best on your journey. So thank you for everything.
Madam President?
Yes.
I would move that a resolution be prepared for the board to send to our departing employee that we haven't had the pleasure meeting before. But most people leaving don't have that kind of an accolade, and I think it's worthy of a resolution that she can take with her. So if we could do that.
Second.
And what a beautiful presentation you made on her contribution.
There's a motion on the table. Any
Second.
discussion? Thank you. Voting on Manager Miller's motion, Manager Maxwell?
Aye.
Manager Miller?
Aye.
Manager Sando?
Aye.
Manager Loftus?
Aye.
Manager Hitchmati?
Aye.
Manager Olson?
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. And I hope that you will frequently check the website.
Can I ask you?
Yes.
I'd just like to thank you. You taught me a new verb tonight. I worked 43 years for Rockwell Automation. I've never heard of the word automize. You said it. I looked it up to make sure it's real. And it's real. So I thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much. Wish you all the best. Are there any inquiries, issues, or ideas that managers would like to contribute for possible future discussion?
I'll add one.
Yes.
Just because it was brought up just very briefly. The whiskey database. I don't know what that thing's been up to for a while. I remember hearing about it a lot for a couple years, and then...
It's aging.
Is it? I don't know what we're doing with it. So just out of curiosity for inquiries and issues and...
Just a quick update at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
are
okay.
we doing anything with that?
On the list. And the administrator's report, Mr. Whisker.
Thank you, President White, managers. Well, off the top, it's still around.
Oh,
The
good.
whiskey database.
Okay.
As Marissa just mentioned, all of our resident data with the scripting that she developed, we're transporting the data, QA/QCing the data, and then the scripts and code that she's written push that data right into whiskey. So it's supporting housing, summary, ecological data, all of our water quality data that we collect, and then flow and level data from ResNet. And that's the layperson summary. We can get a more detailed.
And that's what we intended for it to do,
That's
right?
what it does.
Okay,
And
so
it's
we've,
new.
okay. And that was the full breadth of what we were hoping for?
Yeah, I think so, because,
Okay.
I mean, it was the core component, right? Because the watershed district's been really sort of poor, what do I want to say, data management system poor. All of our permitting data, historically, all of our water quality data existed in Excel, and I don't know, raise your hand if you've used Excel. It does a lot of things.
There's a lot of things.
None of them particularly really well, and doesn't do data management all that great. And so whiskey is a dedicated system for water quality and ecological data that a lot of the watersheds in the metro area use. And that was one of the key functions, is to make it easy to put information in and make it easy to query information out. And I think some of the work that Brian and his team have done is then taking the data out of whiskey and then pushing it and through data visuals into the website. So it's, they're using it on a routine basis to extract information and do trend analysis. Some of the graphs that we presented tonight in the budget that show lakes that are trending towards meeting water quality standards. All that data is stored in there. It's easy to get out. It's easy to do trend analysis. The diagnostic data for County Road 6 or Auburn is indexed. So it's storage and withdrawal. And then, I think that the final piece, I'm losing track of what I'm trying to say through data visuals to the website for public consumption.
Yeah, I think maybe I just remember when it was new and you're adding modules and da-da-da-da. And I think now it's more of a behind the scenes collector versus we don't say, here's our lake grades, here's our whiskey information. You know, we say, here's our lake information. We're not calling it that. So it maybe just lost that connection.
No, I
But
think that's exactly right.
not that that's something, it would confuse people to advertise whiskey on our website. And they'd get excited and then they'd realize it's not what they were hoping for. But
Or that we spelled it wrong.
yeah, or we spelled it wrong. But I think I'm just remembering, you know, okay, I didn't realize at the time maybe that it was a behind the scenes data push more than like lake grades, here's the new system. In my head, I thought it was called that and that we would be calling it that. But it makes sense that it's an internal behind the scenes kind of data cruncher.
Right, but that doesn't mean that we can't kind of showcase something.
No, we don't need to talk about it. I remembered the word and I was like, oh, what happened to that?
One of the integrations it has is with GIS too, which Excel doesn't have, and so it's much easier to sort of pull mapped data of water quality, water levels, or ecological data. So that was one of the key features too. The module, I can't remember what they're all called either. The module that you're referring to is really for ecological data because the base system came with water quality, water level, and I think research and monitoring staff that preceded Brian brought that forward.
So we can just call it research and monitoring data. We don't have to call it whiskey.
Whiskey data.
Whiskey data. Okay, thank you.
I'm reading a book called When Minnehaha Flowed with Spirits or something, and what? Whiskey's involved.
Well, that's probably,
Long time ago.
Whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting, right? That's a Mark Twain quote. In terms of data, water level update is part of the administrator's report. You're getting used to this. It's still dry. We're 5 inches below normal. We received just over 17 inches of precip this year. Although we've gotten a few showers recently, and our drought classification has improved, so now we sit in a steam class of 72% of the rest of the state in moderate drought instead of severe drought. It's still been warm. If you've been outside the last couple of days, you might say hot, boiling even. Water levels in that kind of environment continue to decline, so Lake Minnetonka is sitting at 928.2, 14.4 inches below ordinary high, so really significant. Almost 5 inches below the runout elevation of 928.6, and you know once we get below that critical elevation, we close the dam, which we did back in July, and since the dam was closed, Minnetonka has fallen an additional 4.8 inches due to evaporation. So, without being too glib, I guess we need to say some prayers for rain. I provided a brief written update yesterday regarding staffing, and just wanted to give a brief recap here in case you didn't have a chance to see that, see if there's any questions, but just keep the pulse of information flowing. We did recently welcome 2 new staff members, so that was a big accomplishment after numbers going the other way over the last 6 months. We've welcomed Sophia Green to project planning and Maggie Menden as our new permitting assistant. I think Sophia was introduced at our last committee meeting. Maggie isn't here tonight, but she's going to be here for introduction at our next meeting. We just bid a fun farewell to Marissa, who's traveling west to continue her journey. And with an existing vacancy in Brian's department and Marissa's departure, Brian and the project and the program managers have been discussing the timing and strategy for filling those positions to make sure we can keep driving forward our important diagnostic work, our modeling work, and making sure that his team has some resilience. They're obviously going to be running pretty lean in the near future. In terms of next on deck, we are going to be initiating the interview process for a communications coordinator position in outreach with Samantha, for which we've received over 40 applications. I think part of our experience bringing Maggie and Sophia on is the market shifting a little bit. We're seeing a little bit higher volume, a decent candidate pool overall, so we're hoping for the same thing as we sift through the 40+ applications that we've received for the communications coordinator. And then operations is shortly behind that. Deb has been working with me to try to hire herself a new manager essentially, and we hope to move through that process by the end of September. And then I mentioned Brian and research and monitoring. His team and policy planning both have vacancies. We'd start to think about posting those or advertising those as we get into October. We've been finding 2 at a time is sort of a sweet spot, and more than that's sort of difficult for our interview panels and also for onboarding. I'm going to pause there. I've got one more update. I'm not sure if there's questions on staffing or if people know what's going on and are feeling pretty comfortable. Good. Oh, sorry, Gene. I thought you were going to say something. To sign off this evening, I just wanted to take a quick moment to express my gratitude to the board and staff and Chris and Lewis for just continuing to make the Watershed District an amazing place to work. I usually save my moments of gratitude for around review season. And I thought, well, I'm going to be strategic and plant some seeds ahead of December here. And I might be getting, I don't know, older or sentimental, but I spent some time reflecting on where the organization stands, how far we've come, and how much fun we're having recently. And it just occurred to me I should say those things out loud because things can be fleeting. And I just wanted to note we're, from my perspective, really blessed to have a vision-aligned, cohesive, and supportive board of managers that's supportive, but also willing to always...
I was waiting for that.
Yep. But always willing to question status quo and hold the line on excellence. You guys ask great questions. You're always trying to push us to the next level. You hold a real standard that trickles down through the organization. It has a real impact. As you've just seen from some of the presentations tonight, we've got a staff, a growing staff, hopefully, of what I like to call impact players. I was on the phone with Bill today. We're talking about impact players, and from my vantage, impact players and a lot of the members on our team, they're less concerned about doing their job, and instead they're focused on doing the job that the organization needs, and the job that the organization needs to achieve its mission. I see people all the time getting outside their lane, and a lot of places like get in their lane, do your job, but here I think we're encouraging people to get outside of their lane, and we see our staff helping each other through challenge points and get over the finish line and do what the board's doing, keep challenging each other. And that makes things a lot of fun. And then we've got, sounds like everybody agrees on Gene's.
Yeah, they're having fun.
I'm getting confused. We've got then this great team of advisors in Lewis and Chris that have helped us build the organization and always, I think, have our back with sound counsel. And then just the work, this raft of really inspiring work that's in front of us that I'm confident is going to leave the watershed a much better place than we all found it. I think that's why, hopefully, that's why we're all still here. As I was thinking about it, my observation to myself is it hasn't always been this particular mix of fun and challenge and ease. It's just we're in a really good spot right now, and I know that those things aren't permanent always. So I'm savoring the moment, and I wanted to say those things out loud and just take the opportunity to say thank you to everybody. So thank you.
Well said.
Thank you. It sounds like a benediction. If that's the end of your report,
That's it.
the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank